Hi, I'm Adrian Sullivan.
And I'm Peter Parker, and
What?
I've been Spider-Man since I was 15 years old.
Oh my God. Well,
Anyway.
it is Halloween weekend. I'm with Joey Pasco here. It's New Orleans. It's the Star City Games amazing Open Series here. It's Standard Day 1. We've had many rounds of Standard. It is 6 rounds in the books, more to come, and 242 players here this weekend. A lot of different kinds of decks out there. What did you see out in the when you were walking around?
Yeah, I've been walking around all day, watching a lot of Magic, catching a lot of different matches, bits and pieces. A lot of interesting stuff out there, but nobody would be surprised to hear Thragtusk, obviously still a major player in the format.
I mean, Thragtusk is a card that's so powerful that when it was printed, people said it was going to kill Delver all on its own. Now, it didn't do that when Delver was around, throwing its little winged weight around. But what it did do is it did change things a little bit. I mean, 5/3, 5 life. When it leaves play, you get another 3/3. I mean, this is a combination of effects is super powerful, so powerful that if you look at the top lists, it is the case that I would say the vast majority of decks that are winning are running 4 Thragtusk, or if they're not running 4, there's a couple running 3.
Sure, yeah, I mean, it's a major part of all the decks, all the winning decks. And it's funny because you're right, it was hailed as the anti-Delver, right? It was going to save Standard, and the funny thing is, it didn't necessarily do that, as you mentioned, but the rotation did that. And now, instead of Delver, we're left with a format just stock full of Thragtusk.
Right. Now, one of the things that we used to see in the old format a month ago, because this has only been about a month that we've had this format, is we used to see a ton of aggro control. And what would that be? We would be having essentially various versions of blue-white Delver. And by aggro control, what does that mean? That means that we're going to have a quick clock, and we're going to back it up with a little bit of time-controlling permission.
Right.
Well, what has happened is that kind of deck, which had Geist of St. Traft usually, though not always, there just aren't the kinds of cards to make that deck really exist anymore. And so instead, you've got a slightly slower deck, which is one of the few non-Thragtusk decks here, blue, white, red, that we saw probably first really make a splash in Japan.
Yeah.
And then Todd Anderson took it and got first place, I believe, at he
top-8'd last week.
Top-8'd, pardon me, yeah.
Top-8'd in
blue, white, red.
Indianapolis.
Top-8 with Todd Anderson at the helm of blue, white, red in Indianapolis just last week. And that is the second most popular deck here, all told. And also, on top of that, you've got this Geist of St. Traft character, and what makes this blue, white, red deck kind of a thing? Geist of St. Traft and Thundermaw Hellkite hanging out together in the same deck.
Right, you mentioned Thundermaw Hellkite, and Thundermaw was, the red Baneslayer. Again, alongside Thragtusk, was one of the big faces of M13.
Yeah, absolutely.
Over the summer, but it didn't really make much of an impact for a couple of months.
Yeah.
And then now we're seeing it show up in lists, and it's making a big impact now.
Absolutely.
We see Chi Hoi Yim, invitational finalist.
Yep.
The Star City Games Open Series.
His deck is probably the strangest of these blue, white, red lists.
Yeah, so he takes the Todd Anderson list, or the Japanese list.
Yeah.
Even further towards aggro, away from control. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, let's do an imagination game here for a second. If we, up here we got control, and say down here we got aggro, and there's a big circle that goes around. You keep kind of dialing it down one side of that circle, and at a certain point, you end up becoming not a control deck anymore. You become a mid-range deck, right? And that's what most of these decks have done, is they become kind of this mid-rangey style deck. Well, Chi Hoi Yim is like, let's just push it down a little bit further. And so what he's done, essentially, he's got Galvanic Juggernaut, you know?
And it's just like, wait.
And do you know what that card does off the top of your head?
Exactly.
I mean,
like,
what?
Well, Juggernaut, old Juggernaut was 4 mana for a 5/3, had to attack.
That's the old
every
one,
turn, right?
yep. This one's a 5/5. That seems like a lot better, right? It has to attack every turn too. Well, it doesn't get to untap unless something dies.
Okay.
I wonder how that's going to happen in this format.
Why would anybody ever kill any of my guys? Well, maybe
or
because
why
I'm
would I kill
beating
yours?
them with it. Right, exactly.
So
not only that, he got Fettergeist.
Yeah.
Another card that you don't see a lot of.
Absolutely, and his deck has 4 Devil's Play as well. And to talk with Chi Hoi about this, essentially what it boiled down to was he was doing so much damage, he just wanted to make sure that when it came to the 5th, 6th turn, that he could just go, you're dead.
Right, either with Devil's Play or
With-
Thundermaw
Yeah.
attacking, right?
Dragon.
Yeah, Dragon's always fun.
Yeah. Now, both of these decks are kind of mid-range aggro decks, but Chihui pushes it a little bit further into the actual land of true aggro with a ton of burn and a couple, I believe, 2 unsummons.
Yes.
Whereas most of these lists, they're a little bit more controlling. They're like a little bit more like counterspell here, counterspell there, but not enough really to feel like a true aggro control deck because they're not really putting that time control into it all that often. You know, it's more like a little bit of control elements and a little bit of beatdown elements, making it a little bit more mid-range since it's not usually pushing on a waste your turn kind of thing.
Sure. Let's wind that clock. Push it even further down, all the way down to aggro.
Right into aggro. Now we're talking about zombies.
Yeah,
right?
Zombies, the deck.
Yeah.
Going into the format, everyone's
like, this is the one.
This is level 1.
Yeah.
Or whatever level 0 is, Chapin would say, right?
Yeah.
This is level 0 of the metagame.
Right.
What's the next
Depends
level?
on who you... Oh, yeah, you know,
Sure,
however
sure.
you want to use your terminology there.
Right.
Like zombies, 25 players playing zombies. We already mentioned that, right? So that's the top 3 deck lists. Jund Ramp is number 1 with 31 lists. This blue-white-red list we've been talking about, number 2 with 26 players playing it. And then Zombies, number 3, and that's nearly an even split between black-red and black-green, with one little black-blue zombie player out there hanging out just to mix things up a little bit. And then the other aggro decks we've seen, actually one of the things I find really interesting, a small player in the field today, Mono Red, was 6 players playing it, and at the end of round 5, there was a undefeated Mono Red player, and also, this is actually pretty cool, there are 2 red players that are in the very top of the field, and a 3rd red player who's right there on the cusp.
Wow.
Meaning that
almost half of the red players are doing pretty well.
Which is pretty exciting to me, particularly because I love
Right.
red. I mean, and to be fair, one of those red decks is a red deck splash black.
Okay,
you know,
but it's if it's the one I think you're talking about,
yeah.
it's very.
It's not
very much
zombies.
a red
We're not
deck,
talking about black red. We're talking about red black.
Right, it kind of splashes black.
Yeah.
It's Falcon Wrath Aristocrat.
Aristocrat,
things like
yeah,
that, which
yeah.
are very red cards in general.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, these are Ash Zealot decks, is what they are. These are decks that are like spend red on turn 2.
Yeah.
Yeah. You don't see generally Ash Zealot hanging out with, say, Geralf's Messenger, which is that'd be pretty exciting if you want to put them in the same deck. And if by exciting you mean frustrating in at least some number of your games.
Suicide black red kind of. I don't know. But yeah, going back to the zombies, we said there's about almost 250 players here.
Yep.
25 zombies.
Yep.
List. So 10% of the field is zombies.
And, you know, they're a little bit
How are they
underrepresenting. You know, they've only got 4 players that are at the top edges of the field. However, one of those players, we've got standings from round 5 and standings from round 6, just to kind of give a picture of how things have been moving.
Okay.
There are, at this point, 4 undefeated players, and one of them is black-red zombies.
Okay,
so
yeah. Coleman Parrott there, and currently in 4th place after
absolutely,
round 6.
absolutely. Now, if we continue out with the other decks that are out here, one thing that becomes kind of interesting is when you look at all of the kinds of decks, there is a ton of mid-range in this room.
Yeah.
And then not very much beatdown overall. And when it comes to actual kind of pure control, it's not very much of it, and it's not doing well.
It's not as little as the aggro though. It feels like there's a little more control than aggro, but there's mid-range. You're right. Is all over the place.
Well, one of the things about the aggro, if you look at like the various different things, like let's say we talk about blue-white-red. There are 26 blue-white-red, kind of this mid-rangey style deck. But then there are 7 pure blue-white-red control decks.
Okay.
You know, and that we're talking about various different Wrath of God effects, whether it's, Supreme Verdict or Terminus, right? One has Supreme Verdict, Terminus, and Bonfire.
Sure.
So it really wants to blow up the world.
Right.
There's only 7 of them. No one's really doing great with it. And then one blue-white-red aggro deck, like a pure-out aggro deck. So that's actually Chihui, who's there in that camp. He's all by himself.
And there's a deck tech actually for you guys if you want to see a little bit more about Chihui Im's deck. That's already available.
But I mean, this is kind of the story of how these colors have been working, is that for the most part, it's all mid-range. And then you've got a couple of other decks that are control and a few less that are aggro. One exception, white-green. There's a lot of white-green aggro, and in fact, white-green aggro is the 6th most popular archetype. If we go through them all, Jund Ramp, number 1, blue-white-red mid-range, number 2, Zombies, number 3, Bant mid-range, number 4, and then 5 and 6 tied together, are Bant Control and Bant Midrange. Or sorry, pardon me, and White-Green Aggro. My bad. White-Green Aggro and Bant Control. 2 decks, the Bant Control list basically looks like Blue-White Control with Thragtusks.
And that's exactly what I have here. Patrick Chapin actually wrote in his article about he thinks I think the title of the article last week was the 3 best cards in Standard. The best cards in Standard are in Bant Control.
Absolutely.
And the thing is with Bant Control, it's Blue-White plus Farseek and Thragtusk. That's really like the core of the thing. And of course, it's using a lot of the lists are going with the Restoration Angel, Centaur Healer, just to get a little bit more out of the synergy of the deck of being able to blink cards with Restoration Angel. Centaur Healer is a nice way to stop the aggro.
Now, that's interesting that you talk about that, because those decks that move even further and further towards that Centaur Healer direction, essentially the more they shift away from being a pure control deck and become like a mid-range deck, they're the ones that are winning. The ones that are trying to just splash Thragtusks and not do anything more, they're not doing as well as the people that are running the Centaurs and the Thragtusks and a few other spells that are in there as well that are kind of more putting some presence on the board rather than blowing everything up all the time.
Now, talking a little bit about the control decks that are here, one of the ones that's doing well is Esper Control. Now, Esper is a deck that we haven't seen a ton of yet. I mean, it's a pretty new format at the moment, less than a month old. But 3 players that I respect a lot have been pushing Esper or have mentioned something. We've got Shaheen Surani.
I respect his work a lot.
One Virginia States.
Absolutely.
Wrote his article on Esper Control. Sold me.
Yeah, he's a Planeswalker kind of build.
It's very Planeswalker.
Right.
He's got he's got Jace, he's got Tameo, and he's got Sorin.
He's been playing those 3 guys together for a long time.
Yes, he has. And looking around, especially earlier in the day, a lot of people must have been sold because I saw a lot of Sorins. In fact, when I was first walking around, I was walking. A few minutes go by. I'm like, wow, Sorin. And then I see Thragtusk in somebody's hand, and I went, that's the first Thragtusk I've seen. I've seen more Sorins than Thragtusk. Now, it hasn't panned out that way for the rest of the day. But Shaheen wrote his article about it. Jerry showed in the SCG Premium newsletter, just mentioned Michael Hetrick. Another really good player playing Esper Control. And Jerry says, he thinks that Esper may be the deck where you want to be. And so, 3 players I have a lot of respect for.
Now, of the 23 people that are still in strong contention, 2 of them, so 10% of them, are Esper decks.
Okay, I thought, but the other Esper deck, is it more of a tokens build?
Well, that was it. Some of my other numbers here are from round 5.
Okay.
Round 6, Esper Control still has 2 in the running.
Awesome.
As of round 5, there were 3 in the running, so one of them looks like it fell out of the running.
Okay, I see.
Yeah.
So, Esper, that's the deck. I'm pretty excited to try that out myself. Yeah. Basically, it's just like I'm going to play Lingering Souls and use these guys to buy time to win with Planeswalkers, or sometimes I might just go Sorin Emblem kill you, attack you with 2/1 flyers, and sometimes that works. And another card I want to point out in that list, and we were talking to a player here earlier today, Shaheen Surani also mentioning in his article, Drogskull Reaver. Dr. Fingers, whatever.
That's a great name for it.
Like a 3/5.
It's like your nemesis.
Double strike, sure, why not? So it's like a 3/5 lifelink double strike, draw a card when you gain life. So every time it deals damage, you draw 2 cards.
Right. It kind of reminds me of a Consecrated Sphinx.
Life. It's very Consecrated Sphinxy, and it's tough to deal with, especially when if you just have like 1 copy. A lot of decks are trying to fight control decks, going, they're going to play Entreat the Angels, or they're going to play like Angel of Serenity, or what are they going to win with? Well, you diversify your win conditions. You have Jace, you have Tameo, you have Sorin, and then you have Drogskull Reaver. And Slaughter Games looks like a joke. It's laughter games now, right? You cut the S off the front.
That's funny. I like that. Laughter games.
Yeah.
Our 4 undefeated lists still left. 1 blue-white-red mid-range.
Okay.
1 white-green. Initially, I had written it down as mid-range because I was writing a lot of lists, going through every one of the 250 lists that we had. But looking at it more close up, it is a white-green beatdown deck. It's very heavy on the white, but it's not shabby on the green either. Silverblade Paladin, Rancor, and then a supporting cast to make it work. The other 2 undefeated decks, Junk Tokens, So we can expect that we got our 4 Thrag Tusks like before. We got Lingering Souls and Intangible Virtues and Sorens and Little Garrick.
Yeah, this deck broke out in Providence.
Yeah.
And I think it's obviously a very powerful strategy.
Yep.
One card I did want to point out.
Oh yeah, in the white-green deck.
In the white-green deck, Sigarda.
Sigarda. That card's
a lot of people. 5 hex.
pretty sick.
Can't sacrifice. No sacrifice effects.
Take that, Lily.
Yeah. Laughs at Liliana.
The last one is Black-Red Zombies. I don't see that list in front of us right here, but that's okay. Like, one of the things about Black-Red Zombies is Black-Red...
it's right here.
Oh, is it?
But that's an interesting... I think we may have gotten something.
Oh, there's that. There, yeah, looks like there's a switcheroo.
Yeah.
Pardon me, not Black-Red Zombies. No, Jund Ramp.
Okay.
Yeah, so that does mean that we've got 4 different decks in our top 4 thus far. Now, obviously, we've got a couple of rounds left.
Yeah.
There are 9 rounds today.
Yes. And we're currently in round 7, I believe. So this is as of the end of round 6. And Jund, let's talk a little bit about that. We actually saw Jund in the Pro Tour doing just this past week, and it was a different format, modern Jund. But it's funny how these colors seem to be very similar across formats, right? There's no Blood Raid Elf, there's no Dark Confidant, right? There's no Kitchen Finks available, but it's the best. Well, these powerful cards.
It's funny though, because like in Standard, Jund I think is performing. Mm-hmm. In Modern, all of the data points to Jund underperforming.
Okay.
Patrick Chapin wrote something really nicely about this, where he looked at the data and he was like, yeah, Jund in the major matchups of the tournament only beat one of them. There were like 6 or 5 archetypes, and Jund had bad matchups against all but one.
Well, generally, performance aside, generally the idea, I think it's very interesting how across formats with a completely different and a vastly expanded card pool, you actually, if you were to describe a Jund deck, and you would, you without naming cards,
right?
You describe the deck, and it applies to both Standard and Modern.
Well,
right?
they're both good stuff decks.
Yeah, it's just black, green, red, good stuff.
And one of the good things right now is the. I'm gonna go back in time for a second.
Yeah.
Let's go back to the good stuff. It's a good stuff deck, right? And one of the things that is good about this Jund in Standard is Farseek.
Yeah,
Farseek is not a card like Farseek is not even good enough in Modern, unless you want to call the Deathrite Shaman the Farseek of Modern.
It's an accelerator.
But yeah, I mean, if you want to call Deathrite Shaman the Farseek of Modern, I mean, you could. I don't think that's necessarily a huge stretch, but it's certainly not exactly the same card.
Right.
So when you were out there looking at the Jund lists, did you see anything interesting?
Nothing that jumped out at me as far as Jund goes. Pretty much the stock things, and I think that sort of speaks to the fact that Jund is a bunch of good stuff. But you say Jund, and there's no real stock Jund list.
Yeah,
there are cards that if I say Liliana, I'm running it.
Yeah.
You're not. Either one is a stock choice.
We've got our 12 green cards, and then who knows?
Right. It's just like Thrag Tusk, Swamps, Mountains, Forests, and other than that, the rest you can fill out the other 52 cards.
Right.
So
now
should we wait? Sorry to make you have to edit.
Early miss live.
So one of the things, though, I think that's really interesting, Reanimator has been the talk of the tournament in the finals of every one of our SCG events since the format rotated.
Yeah.
And I'm going to tell you right now, looking at what's at the top of the lists, there is not a Reanimator to be found, not near the top.
Things have started to, maybe people have started to figure out how to deal with Reanimator. Maybe some other people don't want to have such big targets on their back, but there are still people out there that want to play an Angel of Serenity and a Gristlebrand.
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the things that could happen is that it could be that people have seen it do well, and so it's on their radar these days, and maybe it's just got a glass jaw.
Sure.
I don't know. I haven't actively tried to take it out myself yet.
I think one of the cool things about the deck was that it kind of morphed into this sort of, a lot of the lists, everybody's kind of going in different directions. When you say Reanimator, you could actually have Freets kind of style Reanimator,
there's several
or you could have
versions
more of a ramp version.
If you count them all, there are 11 Reanimator decks. If you put all of those versions together, there are 11 of them, making it the 7th most popular deck of the weekend.
And I think one of the things making the Reanimator lists more resilient is they're tendency towards maybe more ramp, less graveyard. So you're like, oh, opponents are going to hate out on my graveyard. Well, I'll just cast it.
Yeah.
Tap 7 Angel of Serenity.
Boom.
What are you going to do? Thank you. You just Tormod's Crypt away. Go ahead. I don't mind.
I don't know. What would you have played if you had come here this weekend?
As I mentioned, I think Shaheen has sold me on Esper Control.
Yeah.
Well, I'll say Shaheen, Jerry, and Michael Hetrick have sold me on Esper Control.
There
I
you
actually
go.
slightly prefer Hetrick's list that he's been doing well with on Magic Online. That was featured in the SCG Premium newsletter.
Right.
A little bit more controlling. Shaheen goes with the Augur of Bolus, Rune Chanter's Pike kind of plan. It's just a one of, but some amalgamation of both are impressive to me, and that's kind of what I'm going with. So Esper is where I want to be.
Yeah.
But I noticed you posted on Facebook that you wish you could play in the tournament because there are 3 standard decks that you want to be playing.
Yes.
So what are those decks? Tell us at least a little bit.
I'm gonna go in 3, 2, 1 order.
Okay.
Deck number 3 is basically Stompy. And when I say Stompy, I don't mean like white-green beatdown, because that's some people have kind of taken white-green and put it in the fold of Stompy. I'm talking about mono-green.
Okay. Yeah. When I think of Stompy, when I hear Stompy, I think mono-green.
Yeah.
And I think capital S, lowercase t, capital O, lowercase.
Yeah. Well, that's probably because of Mike Flores.
Could be.
But that when Mike does that, he's usually referring to a very particular era of Stompy, rather than all Stompy.
When it was popular on the internet to alternate capital and lowercase letters, and which was around when this old version was popular. So tell us about this.
No, this
new
one.
version.
This one basically, I think. Why would you play a mono color deck? Well, you have to do it because of incentives.
Mm-hmm.
The incentive for this one is Predator Ooze, and green.
Mm-hmm.
It really is. It's pretty good.
Yeah.
You've got a lot of game with it. It gives you a lot of play against a lot of things, and what it is indestructible, and it keeps growing. And when you add the Predator Ooze with Revenge of the Hunted, and then like Rancors and other things, if you have a solid green beatdown plan, it's just a really hard card to deal with, and I've been having a lot of success with it.
Sounds fun.
Yeah, it is really, really fun. I had initially in it 4 Giant Growths, which is really old school, but eventually I had to cut those out because they weren't doing enough. But the deck's good, but it's not as good as the next deck, which is like everybody apparently that likes to brew. I've got my version of Epic Experiment. I saw after I'd been working on mine, Travis Wu posted an article about it, and I'm like, oh, okay, so Wu's on it too, and I hadn't written mine yet. And then later that same week, Flores posted one, and
the funnest deck in Standard.
Yep, and I have to say, as I think every single brewer will say, their versions are bad.
Everybody else's versions are wrong. Mine's right.
Exactly.
It's just how it goes.
That's just the way it is. I mean, what are you gonna say when it's the case?
So what's the number 1 deck?
What's the number 1? I can't call it mono red.
Okay.
Because it does have Falcon Wrath Aristocrat.
Okay, this is similar to maybe what we were talking about a few minutes ago.
Red aggro splashing the touchiest touch of black for Falcon Wrath Aristocrat, and then a couple sideboard cards. And my answer to Thragtusk, because a lot of problems, was like, what do you do about a Thragtusk? Oh, it's so huge. My answer to it is, amongst other things, 4 Thundermaw Hellkites, and then just being a very fast, aggressive deck. And I have definitely beaten triple Thragtusk before. So, I mean, it is playing out so well, and it's so awesome. I'm at that stage with it where my 57 cards in my main deck are figured out, and one of the cards that isn't figured out is a land. So it's like which land?
You've got a pretty good build, and I saw you were playtesting it on a little break.
It's so much fun, But I would be playing red. I'd be playing red.
Not a shock. You're playing red. I'm playing blue.
It's funny because I've played a lot of blue in my time, and it's just that one of the things about red is if red's good, most people play it so badly that your opponents don't know that red's good and they underprepare for it.
Okay.
So there's a little bit of bonus for it.
Sure.
But one of the negative parts about red is that you play cards like, I don't know, Stromkirk Noble. And Noble, I've got 4 of them in the deck. He's kind of a weak guy right now.
Yeah.
But you still kind of need him. So
you need a 1-drop.
Yeah, I mean, I've got my Cackler, and then from there you have to go, okay, what else am I going to do?
Right.
I don't have 12 zombies to go with, or I should say, 8 zombies and 4 Cacklers. I've only got my 4 Cacklers, and then I've got to dig.
But we'll see if some of these red decks that we mentioned that are doing well here today in New Orleans, we'll see if they can kind of further the cause for you.
Absolutely. Well, so that is kind of what I think our field looks like today. We had 242 players for 9 rounds of Swiss. The top of the field, like we said before, 4 different archetypes: Jund Ramp, Junk Tokens, White-Green midrange, and Blue-White-Red midrange. If we were both here, you'd be playing...
Yeah, I'd be playing Esper Control.
I'd be playing Red Blacks. Just imagine in your head if we were also undefeated. That'd be 6 different archetypes that were undefeated.
Yeah, for sure.
I would like to be undefeated at round 6. That'd be fun.
It would be, and there's players in the room that are in that situation. So we're gonna step away for now. We'll be back in a bit, but for StarCityGames.com, I'm Joey Pasco.
I'm Adrian Sullivan.
We'll be back soon.